So in quarantine at the beginning, um, obviously college went online and we had to move from our dorm. So that's a major thing for me that I've been experiencing. And then also just having to socially distance from friends and family. So right now I'm at my grandparents' house. So I haven't seen my mom like in person or my other grandparents in person since I got back to Fort Wayne. Um, because of distancing, and that's been probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, like obviously just like everyone else, it's like I'm not seeing my friends or family as much. Like my grandparents, I'm trying to not see them and expose them because they're more susceptible to the illness. And I think overall it's just like affected my mentality and a lot of people's mentality um about like prioritizing things and also putting things into perspective, like what's really important. And like it's just kind of a lesson, I guess, on like what we need. It's like a wake up call, I guess, like with all the things going on globally and the things that have changed, good or bad, with the illness as well, I think.
Personally, it's affecting me. Really, my education is one of the biggest ones because, like I said, we're online now, so all my classes are just strictly online, which is really hard to kind of navigate and adjust to so quickly. So that's a really big factor. And then I guess another one is just mentally, it's really hard to be in the house and not be able to connect with different people and really change your schedule to what you're used to it being. And so part of that is just trying to find new ways to reroute my schedule and reroute my routine to make myself productive every day and make sure that I'm not just, laying around and I'm actually taking advantage of my time here.
Yeah. Like my parents' biggest concern, or one of the big concerns that they voiced to me, is probably financially and having to limit our spending on just like every scale. Like obviously buying only essential things and like things that we don't need are not a priority right now.
So obviously,
Um,
like one of my biggest concerns is my family, just making sure, like hoping that they're safe. My God family were showing signs of the coronavirus and they weren't able to get tested even though the signs were pretty clear. And it's really scary because, that's something that affects me personally, but just also that tests aren't being distributed the way that they
I think
should. But
initially I wasn't really worried about it because I was more like, well, we deserve this as a country, because with American exceptionalism and everything else, like Americans genuinely tend to not care about what's going on across the world if it's not directly affecting us. So in that sense, initially I was like, we deserve this because people have experienced this for years. Like people are continually experiencing this, and once it happens to us, we act like it's the end of the world and that we can't handle on our own. So in that sense, I was kind of like non-sympathetic.
there
But
are people who, may have a higher status in life, whether they be a politician or whether they be a celebrity who are getting tested with no symptoms whatsoever. Obviously, there's big issues with equipment. There's big issues with um, like having enough masks and having enough tests and stuff like that. But I think some of the biggest issues that are really alarming to me is that not every state is being required to quarantine and actually shut down their businesses and make people social distance. And I think that is one of the big reasons why we're not seeing a flattening of the curve, because states aren't working together to do the issue. Regardless of if I'm in Indiana and someone else is in Ohio, we still need to make sure that we're both social distancing because it can be spread through so many different
and
measures.
then when the government was like, and everyone and authorities were trying to make decisions on how to move forward as it was progressing as a pandemic, I was upset because I think our government was not moving fast enough. And I understand that government, a lot of laws have to be passed through a lot of different legislations, and the president is the president, but ultimately people have to agree with him. But I think in situations like this, when things are moving so rapidly, then legislation and the government needs to move as rapidly, if not faster, than the diseases, if that makes sense. And I think that they did a bad job of trying to prevent further spread. And it's obviously we're way behind now, as like has I think the most cases, the most deaths, and it's growing like the most rapidly. It's like exponentially growing. So I think just on a lot of in a lot of different aspects. The government could have did better.
And I feel like right now, the country, especially the country's leaders who are on top of this, weren't on top of it. They were actually behind. And I feel like with the amount of resources and the amount of money that we have in this country, we should have been on top of this when we found out about it in January, November, when we found out about it. I think that we're behind, and now we're paying for it with people's lives and with people's health.